Hi, I'm Justin from Automate Office Work. I'm a techie lawyer who started automating my office work, and now I'm here to help you on your journey. Today's video lays the groundwork for all future content. It's important to understand process so we can discuss automation, and hopefully you can share this video with your team so you can have better discussions. If you want computers to do your work, you need to structure your work as a process. This illustration shows a workflow with several people involved in certain types of work. You see, we've got people that begin the work, they pass it on to a system. The work goes around and around in a loop, goes to the next person, maybe back to the first person, then back to them. The work just loops around. You can see if you have just your average user sitting there at a computer, their work might look very chaotic to them. They don't see the pattern. They don't see the big picture. So if you want to automate that person's work, we might have to look at the totality of the work that's all being done. You might have to be looking at like, where do you store the data? There's a data repository in the left. As you mature, you might get some monitoring, some data analytics. And then at the final step, the final output is given that the business can use. So one way we can better use computers to do our work is to restructure our work to be able to work better. So what is a process? Process is at the core of everything we do. Everything we do, there's a beginning, some kind of a middle, which maybe there's a decision tree, different logics, and then there's an end of a process. You have to have an end, and often at the end, there's some kind of an output that is done. There are 5 key elements to making any process. If I sit down with a team and we say, okay, we need to put a process around this, well, you have to have those 5 things to actually make a process. The very first thing is the trigger. When is this process going to start? One kind of trigger is an event. There are events when a certain thing happens. There's also a kind of a trigger that takes place at certain times, like once a month we do this, or every January 1st we do a certain kind of review. So you need to nail down what the trigger is for your process. The next thing is who is the actor and who is going to react to the trigger. Maybe it's a person that does something, or you might have an automation that does something. If it's unclear who will react to a trigger, the likelihood of the process being followed goes down. So you want to have somebody assigned. You might also think that if it's kind of ambiguous who in your team takes in requests, maybe you apply an intake person and then divvy the job out to the appropriate team member. You then need to think about the inputs. Somebody sends you an email. What are all the different inputs that you need in order to fulfill the work they're requesting? Because we want to minimize the email conversations going back and forth. It might be then that sending an email is not the best way to allow them to make a request. Maybe you want them to go to an online form instead. And because they're filling out the form with different logics, they give you the exact inputs you need. Next is the processing. So when all the right inputs are received, you then have a decision tree of how to process all the inputs. You know exactly what's going on. You do different calculations, different documents are created, different documents are approved and signed. You might be able to automate the entire process. You might be able to have no human involved at all, or you might have a human that just does a final check of the very last output before it's sent back. The very last thing you want to have in your process is a definite output, because if there's no output, what was the point of doing your process, right? And in addition to the output, you might also want to collect metadata about your process. You might want to be tracking how long it took and what resources were used, so you can better measure those and improve. So you've got the output itself, but you've also got metadata about the output. All right, so how can we apply this to, say, a bakery that makes cakes? Make your process a piece of cake. We have a bunch of cakes with all kinds of ingredients, some intricate toppings. It's all very complex. You've got multiple people that are doing different kinds of jobs on this. How would you organize this, and how does this fit into a process? Okay, so first we have to think about the trigger. Let's say you're just fresh out of bakery school. You're so excited to go make cakes. That's your passion in life. You just want to make cakes. Well, do you just make cakes all day? I don't know. What cakes do you make? What sizes? What flavors? What kinds of decorations? What is your trigger? Do you just wake up in the morning and think, yeah, I want to go make cakes? Are you like a passionate lawyer like me? I wake up in the morning and I just say, hey, I want to go make 1,000 contracts without anybody telling me to. I'm just going to make contracts. No. So you have to have a trigger. And I want you to think, what are the triggers if you're a baker making cakes? Hint, there are at least 2 triggers. One trigger is you wake up or you go into the bakery and you do an inventory and you see how many cakes you have. How many cakes should you have? and then you make up the difference. We'll need to make enough cakes to have our inventory full. That is one of the triggers. Every morning I go in and count the cakes and make the cakes to make up the difference. The second trigger is when a customer makes a custom order. The question then is, how can a customer make an order? Here we've got three different ways how the customer can make the order. They can call you on the telephone, they can make an order through some kind of a website or an app, and make an order by coming in physically and looking at a menu that's in the bakery and ordering off the menu. Okay, so think about your interfaces, how the customer can interact with your bakery. You'll need to have people or systems in place for every kind of interaction you might need to have. You might need to have someone answer the phone, or you could have them interact with a chatbot. If they want to order online, you'll need to have a website or app set up and ready to receive their order. And if they want to come into your bakery, the bakery needs to be open and an employee needs to be ready to greet the customer. These are your triggers and their associated actors. Keep in mind that no matter how the customer chooses to make an order, they will be giving the exact same inputs. Even the person greeting the customer in the store will be taking in inputs in the same order form that is available on the bakery's website. Ideally, we would like for these inputs to be digital from the very beginning so we can store data about the order for future analysis. What kinds of inputs do we need on the cake order form? You take all the customer details. You take the details about the flavor, the filling, the icing, the drawing on the cake, the shape. We need to know about delivery. Are they coming in to pick up or are they delivering it to them? And then we've also got payment info, the money amount. But independent of how the customer is making an order, we are going to get the same inputs. We need to get all of these inputs. Next, we need to talk about outsourcing and specialization. And that connects back to our process map right here. When we're talking about processing, is your team able to do all of the processing itself, or sometimes do you have to go outside and get some of the extra things? And the example here is these carrots. Okay, so let's say the customer is ordering a carrot cake and they say, I really want you to have special organic carrots. Can you, Mr. or Mrs. Baker, can you grow organic carrots yourself in the garden behind your bakery? Can you grow these for me? Well, your team, and think about this in terms of your own work, are you willing to go above and beyond and do custom tests? Do you decide, no, that's not my team's responsibility? Instead, we're going to outsource this. Maybe we have a vendor. Maybe we go to the grocery store and get these organic carrots. But it's good to think up front about the different kind of ad hoc requests. Are you going to streamline your process so much that the customer only gets what you have to offer? Or are you going to allow for these one-off situations? It's good to think about this up front so your team isn't dealing with these questions every time they come up. You might think about it beforehand and then think about that. If you are going to a vendor for these special products during your processing then becomes a trigger for somebody else's process. So you see there can be nesting of all of these processes. You have processes within processes. I should also say here that you could actually require the customer bring in their own special carrots. Put it as one of the inputs required. If a customer requires a special input, they must supply those special inputs. It all depends on your work and how well your team is positioned to go fulfill special requests that require outside inputs. Processing this is where you actually put your bakery skills to use. You need to have the ingredients on hand. You need to have the right equipment. You need to have the right knowledge. You need to have recipes. You need to have procedures. You need to have the right staff who are doing all the different steps that they know that they need to do for their job. This directly relates to employee engagement in the workplace. Most employees are happier at work when they have the equipment they need to do their work and they know what is within their job and what is within the job of somebody else. Oftentimes, once you get rid of all the fluff, all the administrative stuff that's a waste of time, and you let employees just focus on their jobs, adding value, they are so much happier. So this can definitely bring benefits to your company. You let the bakers make cake. Instead of worrying about all the administrative process stuff, you take that off of them and you just let them do their jobs. This is also good for the company because once we get this down and we get this process optimized, you can then scale this up. It doesn't matter how big the company expands, we have the process down. We can scale this up. We can become so streamlined that you can open up a franchise in any country and you can go to any country and you're getting the same experience. The very last step is the output. And this is really why we're doing our work. Why is the baker making the cake? It's a part of somebody else's process. Somebody else is having a birthday party. The trigger for them is they have a birthday party. The inputs they need, they need balloons, they need friends, they need cake. So they're coming to you, and your output now becomes a part of their input, which goes into their birthday party. So in the end, don't forget that you actually have to deliver the output to the customer. You need to make sure that they get it in a timely way and make that connection really, really tight. Now, just a few quick notes to wrap up. Keep in mind interfaces, databases, and data flows. No matter what your process, people need a way to be able to interface with it, to interact with it. They need to be able to connect with it and be able to work with it. So think about interfaces. Make it really elegant and really simple so even the end user doesn't need to read an entire manual. Or when notifying someone to go do something, don't give them a whole novel of stuff. Just ask them for one little bite-sized thing to do. Make it very simple. You might want to give the person different options for how to interact with your process, and you let them decide how they best want to connect with your process. And always keep in mind databases. Your databases can be anywhere, but you want to store data every time work goes through your process, not only to keep track of the work itself, but so you can do later analysis to find patterns and trends and to see how you can improve your process further. You can store your data wherever it makes sense. You might store your data initially in a small Excel spreadsheet, but be prepared to transition later to a database. For some data types, you might be storing documents in a tree of folders, but you do want to be collecting the right data in the right way so that you can use it later. I would also say don't collect too much data from your users. Make sure you're collecting enough data that you need to make the output. If you're asking for like 10 times as much data and it's just superfluous, it's not used, then that's a burden on the end user and they don't like it. And always keep in mind data flows. When are you going to get that piece of data that you need at the end? You might start at the very end, the end state where you want to be, and then work your way backwards. I hope this has been helpful in helping you to start thinking about how you can improve your work processes. First, you need to organize your work as a process. I hope you're able to share these ideas with others and that you can go on this journey with your team to really improve the way we do work and to finally automate your office work. This is the first video. We're excited to connect with you, and you can find us at our website, automateofficework.com, or email us at contact@automateofficework.com. Please help us to grow our new YouTube channel. The username is at automateofficework. Please comment, like the video on YouTube, and subscribe to our channel. You'll probably also see this video shared on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn group that you can join and receive notifications on LinkedIn when we post. You can find us at linkedin.com/company/automateofficework. To not miss content, you can also go to automateofficework.com and subscribe to our newsletter. I appreciate any comments and look forward to connecting with you as you automate your work.